So throughout my internship, um, so the first thing I did basically was to familiarize myself with the island documentary, which was a big chunk of the job that I did there. So I did I did edit the documentary. I did also editing on the operational manual. I did video editing, which is related to the documentary as well, but this was basically more for training. And I also did some monitoring and editing on social media page for the company on a daily basis. And then, of course, you had other tasks which were related to the job that I was doing. So you do have some, office jobs, and then you have some extra work from other departments if they needed us to do so. So now let me talk about the island documentary, which, like I said earlier, was a big part of the assignments that I had. The documentary was actually a very interesting feature of the internship because basically it revolved around what is the main goal of IDC, and its goal is to actually expand and develop and innovate whatever resources they have in order to generate more income for the Seychelles. And so, therefore, for this to happen, they must attract people. People have to be attracted to what they have to offer. And first of all, they have to know about those islands. So the documentary was a way to sort of bring the islands closer to the people. The reason why they decided to do this documentary, in fact, it's a series of documentary, was for them to sort of educate people more about what's happening on the islands. You have to bear in mind that Seychelles is an archipelago of 114 islands. So the islands are not all in a cluster together, they're all scattered in the middle of the ocean. And that's why we do have like two groups. We call them inner islands and then we call them outer islands. So the 14 groups of islands that are under the IDC's care, so 13 out of those 14 groups of islands are actually located within the outer island groups. So it's very far from the main island. So therefore, people have to know about the island themselves, what their flora, their fauna, their geographical location, their history, and what is actually happening at the moment on those islands, the developments there, the people living on the islands, who are they, what are they doing, and what are the roles of those islands in terms of the economic development and the growth in Seychelles' economy. So this actually was the main content of the whole documentary. So I had to understand clearly what they were doing in order for me to step in and understand what I can bring to the table to sort of try and bring about a sort of a productive documentary at the end of the day. So basically, that was the main thing. The first thing I did was to familiarize myself with all the documentaries that had already been done. So the past documentary about some of the islands, and so I had to actually learn that myself. And then, of course, I stepped in into helping to work on the coming documentaries that they're actually still working on at the moment. So that was number one. And number two, I did social media monitoring. So how this worked was every morning I would have to check the Facebook page for the company, and obviously you have a lot of followers on the Facebook page, and people will normally comment, and they will say a lot of things, and sometimes those things are not really true, and sometimes they are true. So sometimes it is required for us from the PR and communication department to sort of step in and explain or give a communique to sort of either back up whatever has been said or to actually disprove any rumor or anything that could people could have said that it's actually not true. A typical example was in terms of rumors. There was rumor that people were spreading on a Facebook page that one of the islands, one of the outer islands, was actually seized by pirates. And so you could imagine the panic this could cause for the public, especially those who have families on the islands. So therefore, we had to step in, and we had to sort of release a communique to the press, and you know, they corrected this rumor because it was not true anyway, and that people were saying that there were pirates on some of the islands and that people were actually in danger. So that was one of my tasks, to monitor the social media page, and then you have to communicate and discuss, are we going to respond to certain comments or not, and then that's how we dealt with it. And sometimes we had to liaise with the media house, because they are the ones sometimes asking us questions whether those allegations were actually true. So we had to defend the organization by releasing a sort of communique, just to make sure that people, the whole population, understands that actually this is not true. So sometimes it was published in the newspaper, or it was briefly mentioned in the news, in the evening every day, that they have on the main broadcasting corporation in Seychelles, which is called SBC. So now the third task that I did was to I dedicated a lot of time editing the operation manual. Now, this is a manual which gives you in detail all the operations in all the departments involved in the IDC company. Now, if you remember, in my report, I have this organigram where I show you all the different segments of different departments under the whole company, and what they take care of, and the people working under each department. So it's a huge department, it's a huge company, and therefore you have to ensure that everybody understands their role. So in order to do that, you have to have an operation manual, obviously, but not just having it, it has to be an operation manual that is really clear and for everyone to understand. So I think we spent about 2 months, to be honest with you, editing this operation manual, because we had to go from one department to another, and then we had to sit down and discuss, edit, and there were three of us. In fact, we had to sometimes get together and decide whether this was correct to say or it was not correct to say, and how we can make it clearer. Is there any ambiguity? Is there any confusion? So basically, we checked for grammatical errors, there were plenty of grammatical errors and unclear statements as well, and some of the sentences were quite obscure, hard to understand, and not really clear. So I think that's where I would say the biggest contribution that I did during the time I was there was basically working on the operation manual, because I think that's where my expertise comes in. Having English as my major, and understanding all the grammatical structure, the syntactical structure, clarity, whether it's accurate, whether it's natural, is that the correct way to say it in English? So they really, really valued my contribution on this project, I would say. Now, the fourth task that I was assigned with was video editing. That's actually another interesting feature as well. The reason why I say so is it's because I've never done video editing before, and to be honest, it was quite daunting for me. I thought this is something that's really going to be a challenge, and I do remember sometimes, back in university where we had to do the campaign, and we were, given different departments to work with, and the first thing I said to myself was, okay, I'm not going to be in the group that will actually do the editing, because I felt like it's not something I can do. I'm not very good at it. However, throughout this internship, it was just amazing to see how I could just, over a few weeks, master the art of video editing. And when I'm talking about video editing, it's all about using all your senses. Yeah. So you have to ensure that, first of all, there's a certain standard you have to bear in mind when when you're actually editing videos. You know, whether you using different techniques, whether the techniques actually collate they collate together, whether it sort of forms a holistic concept, something that's, if I'm showing somebody, you know, I'm swimming in the ocean, I can't all of a sudden, be showing somebody walking in town. It has to collate. The whole idea, the whole picture, the whole story has to collate. It has to be a story that you can follow and that you can really relate with, that you can understand. There's no confusion. Not just that, you have to make sure as well that you have the correct pitch. You know, you hear properly what they're saying. You have to make sure that your pictures they match the voiceover, especially with regards to the documentary. You can't be saying something. You can't be talking about how the island was formed, but then the picture is showing you pictures of birds flying in the sky. So it has to match, and also you have to make sure that the your 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 picture motion is actually complete. It doesn't sort of cut in between. There's lots of little techniques that I've learned, which I really appreciate when I was doing video editing, because it really helped me to sort of use my skills in terms of not just the linguistic skills, but also using all my senses to try and critique the what I'm actually looking at. And interestingly enough, at some point, I really thought I had got it locked up, that I've mastered it, because I've been given, they gave me quite a few, you know, s- segments of videos to sort of put together. I've done this quite a number of times, and eventually I thought to myself, okay, I think this time I've got it. But it's very funny that every time my supervisor would sort of critique and correct and just view the whole montage, excuse me, he would have something to say that I didn't see. It was quite funny because I thought like, okay, this was perfect to me, but apparently it wasn't perfect. So yeah, it was very, very interesting, because interesting part with this task was that I also got the chance to go to the biggest broadcasting corporation in Seychelles, and I made friends with journalists. I met top people in this industry, people who have been there for many, many years, who have been working for the same company for many, many years, who have an enormous amount of knowledge, and just having this experience was just amazing. And until today, I still cherish it. Yeah. So this brings me to the part where I'm going to talk about the skills that I've gained and the responsibilities that I took. So again, I earned video editing skills. Also, I earned social media monitoring skills, because you don't just look at what's there, but you also have to think about how do you go about it, how do you address the situation, and how do you write to communicate to the public, how do you convey the message in a way that will really reassure the public about the safety of the people there. And this reminds me of another thing that we had to do by using social media platform and also the press. In Seychelles, especially during the past, because if it's not the case, I think last year and this year, we do have the sooty bird, the sooty terns, which is a bird that lays egg, and so when they lay egg, we actually collect those eggs for consumption. So they are shipped to Mahe after they've been collected by workers there on the islands. But for the past 2 years, we hadn't collected any eggs, for the simple reason that the company decided to sort of have a survey on the sustainability of collecting eggs, whether we should stop at some point, whether the birds, the sooty terns population is actually decreasing, or whether it is being affected by the fact that we are collecting their eggs, or whether we have to sort of postpone the collection of sooty terns eggs. And so it was very interesting because later on there was a preliminary report that was released, and I got the chance to attend the press conference. I was there with the journalist, which was just amazing again. Um, so yeah, I understood what was happening with regards to the sooty terns, and whether the population is actually decreasing or not, and whether we should keep collecting their eggs. And in fact, they've actually said that there's a possibility that we may stop collecting their eggs at some point in the future, but this is not yet confirmed. However, at the moment, they've decided for this year they were not going to collect their eggs. So that's basically what was happening in this whole company with regards to my internship. And then, of course, I also accrued the textual editing skills, because you have to, not only with the manual operation editing that I did, but also with the text, the script for the documentary. So you have to edit those scripts as well. You have to sit down, you have to go through them one by one, sections by sections, and see for yourself whether you haven't repeated anything you said in the prior episode. Because some of the documentaries, some of them, they may have like three parts, because there's so many things to say about the islands. The history is very rich. There's lots to say about the endemic species there. So Seychelles is a top destination among tourists throughout the world, and we have a lot to share, to explore, and to with the world, for them to know better about this archipelago. So therefore, you can't really say everything in the documentary. So you have to see where do you cut, and you only have about 30 minutes for one documentary. So how do you go about bringing in the most relevant content and cutting out those that you think are not relevant? So really, it was really just amazing. So in conclusion, I would say this. I would say it was an enriching internship. It was just, an eye-opener at the same time, because first of all, I learned a lot of things about my own country which I didn't know. Secondly, it sort of made me felt it made me feel much better, knowing that whatever I've learned at school, in university, in Sega University, I used the knowledge that I accrued there, that I had learned throughout my internship, and it was very much appreciated by my supervisor and all those who worked alongside me. And also, one thing that I also realized and saw at the forefront was the fact that how public relation and media, they go hand in hand, and how you have to have a, a strong connection with the media, because they help you to sort of bring face value to your company, and they can actually destroy you or build you up. So therefore, the rapport that you have with them is very essential, and that's another thing that I appreciated. But also, I have to say, the company is totally independent. Although being a parastatal company, they are totally independent in the operation, and there's no interference on the government how they should do things, although they have to answer at the end of the day to them. But they are totally independent, that they have all the authority for them to decide what to do with the money, how to spend it, and how to to expand, bearing in mind that it has to be sustainable, because Seychelles is actually operating on a sustainable development strategy, if you want. So therefore, transparency is very important for IDC. And when I was there, I also had the opportunity, like I said, so I did other tasks apart from the ones that I've mentioned. So I also had the opportunity to work on the annual report, where they publish it to the public. So you have all the expenditure, all the spending, all the income, the turnover, and if there was any deficit, if there was any how they were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, for instance, all those things are included in the report, which I actually helped. And then you're gonna have a little extract coming from all the members of all the members on the board of directors, and so it's very interesting. Although I didn't get a chance to attend the board's meeting because that's the hierarchy is very high up there, and there's a lot of confidential, confidentiality things that have to be kept secret. But it was just nice to have some kind of feedback from my supervisor who would, share things to me that could be shared, and to